He didn't know the language. He didn't know the people. But when a lonely Korean teen landed in the Philippines, something happened that no one expected. A Filipino family took him in, and what followed would change both of their lives forever. You ever hear stories that sound too heartwarming to be real? This is one of them. This is the story of Min-Jun, a 16-year-old Korean boy who thought his life was falling apart, and how one Filipino family showed him that love doesn't need to speak the same language. Min-Jun grew up in Seoul, surrounded by tall buildings, flashing lights, and endless pressure. His parents worked day and night. His father was a businessman, always traveling, and his mother spent most of her time managing the house. They were good people, but like many families in big cities, they were distant. Meals were quiet, smiles were rare, and love was more about grades and achievements than hugs and laughter. At school, things weren't better. He was quiet, shy, and often bullied for being too soft-spoken. Kids called him Ghost Boy because he barely spoke. The loneliness was heavy, but he never showed it. Then one day, his parents told him they were moving to Canada for work without him. They said it would be temporary, that he'd stay with relatives for a while. But deep down, he knew that temporary could mean forever. That's when his aunt, who lived in the Philippines, offered to take him in. She wasn't rich, just a regular woman living in a small town in Batangas with her husband and 2 kids. For Min-Jun, it felt like exile, a punishment disguised as a vacation. When he first arrived in the Philippines, everything felt strange. The weather was too hot, people were too friendly, and the food, oh man, it was nothing like home. Rice with everything. Sweet spaghetti, and people who smiled even when they didn't have much. It was confusing for him. How could people with less seem so much happier than those in Seoul? He barely spoke any Tagalog, so he stayed silent most of the time. His cousins tried to talk to him, but he'd just nod and walk away. He missed his parents, his friends, and his old life, even if it was lonely. He felt like an outsider in every sense. Then came Tita Rusa, the woman who would change everything. She wasn't just his aunt, she was warmth in human form. Every morning she'd greet him with, "Good morning, anak," and a plate of sinang egg. And fried egg, anak means my child. And even though he didn't understand it at first, he could feel the love in those words. One day, while sitting at the dinner table, she asked him, "Do you miss home?" He hesitated, then nodded. She smiled and said, "This is your home now. Okay, we're your family too." That moment cracked something open in his heart. Over time, Min-Jun started adjusting. He helped out at the small family store, learned a few Tagalog words, and slowly got used to being called Bunso, the youngest one. The neighborhood kids would shout his name every afternoon, inviting him to play basketball, even though he had no idea how to play. He'd laugh, stumble, and fall, but every time he missed a shot, they'd cheer. "It's okay. Kaya, Moyan. You can do it." It was the first time in his life that failure didn't feel painful. It felt okay. One evening, there was a town fiesta. Music filled the air. Lights decorated every corner, and people danced like the night would never end. Tita Rosa pulled Min-Jun to join. He resisted at first, but then he saw his little cousins laughing, dancing without a care. Something inside him shifted. For the first time, he smiled. A real smile. But just when everything seemed perfect, the challenge came. One morning, his aunt received a call. The family store had burned down overnight due to faulty wiring. They lost everything. No savings, no supplies, no income. The house was still standing, but the family's only source of livelihood was gone. Min-Jun watched as Tita Rosa sat on the floor, tears streaming down her face. He had seen adults cry before, but never like this. Never out of pure helplessness. He wanted to help, but what could a 16-year-old foreigner do? That night, he couldn't sleep. He thought about how this family had given him everything: love, care, a home, and now they were the ones in need. The next morning, he made a decision. He took his small savings money he had brought from Korea and gave it to his aunt. It wasn't much, maybe enough to buy a few groceries, but it was everything he had. She refused at first, saying, "No, anak, that's yours." But he shook his head and said in broken Tagalog, "Family helps family." That sentence broke her. She hugged him tight, crying even harder, not from sadness this time, but from pride. That day, Min-Jun wasn't just a guest, he was family. The days that followed were tough. The family sold homemade food to make ends meet. They made banana, Q, halo, anything that could bring in a few pesos. And Min-Jun, he was right there beside them, frying, cleaning, serving customers. The neighbors were amazed, a Korean teen working side by side with them under the sun. People started calling him Korean. And I am Bayan, the Korean son of the town. One afternoon, while he was delivering snacks to the market, he saw a small group of kids sitting under a tree, looking sad. He asked "Edwi?" And they said they couldn't afford school supplies. Without thinking twice, he ran back home, grabbed his last few pesos, and bought notebooks and pencils for them. When he handed them over, the kids' faces lit up. That moment hit him hard. Happiness wasn't about having everything. It was about giving what you could. Months passed, and little by little, the family got back on their feet. The store reopened with help from the community. People donated wood, nails, even canned goods. And every time someone helped, they'd say, "Bayanahan Teyo." Bayanahan means community spirit. The idea that everyone helps each other like one big family. Min-Jun had never seen anything like it. When he called his parents in Korea to tell them everything, his mom cried. She said, "You sound happier than ever." He smiled and said, "Because I found my family here," but laughed, wasn't he? Done teaching him lessons. A few weeks later, his father called and said it was time to move to Canada after all. His papers were ready. It was what he had always wanted, to be reunited with his parents. But now, it felt different. The thought of leaving the Philippines hurt. He wasn't ready to say goodbye. The night before his flight, the whole neighborhood gathered to throw a small farewell dinner. There were songs, laughter, and tears. Tita Rosa hugged him and said, "Remember, anak, no matter where you go, you'll always have a home here." He nodded, holding back tears. At the airport, when he turned around for one last wave, he saw his Filipino family smiling and crying at the same time. He waved back, wearing the same seashell bracelet his little cousin gave him. That bracelet became his reminder that love doesn't need the same blood. It just needs the same heart. Years later, Min-Jun returned to the Philippines as an adult. He wasn't the shy, lonely boy anymore. He was confident, kind, and full of purpose. The first place he went, the small store in Batangas now, bigger and busier than ever. When Tita Rosa saw him, she screamed his name and hugged him so tight it looked like she never wanted to let go. He told her, "You didn't just give me a home, you gave me a life." That visit changed him once again. He started a small charity that helped Filipino children go to school, and they named it Project Bayanihan, in honor of the people who taught him the meaning of love and family. So, how did a lonely Korean teen's life change in the Philippines? The answer is simple. He found what he had been missing all along. Not wealth, not luxury, but belonging. A family that didn't care where he came from, but cared about who he was. A love that didn't need words to be understood. Min-Jun often says, "Korea gave me life, but the Philippines taught me how to live it." And maybe that's the truth about family. It's not about who you're reborn to, but who stands with you when life falls apart. The story of Min-Jun isn't just about adoption. It's about finding home in unexpected places. It's about the Filipino heart open, warm, and ready to love even a stranger like their own. So, if you've ever felt lost or alone, remember this. Somewhere out there, there's a family waiting to love you. Sometimes, you just have to open your heart and let them in. Now, Dantigo, just yet. The next story on your screen will take you even deeper into another real-life miracle from the Philippines that will make you believe in humanity again. Watch it now. ChatGPT can make mistakes. See